Welcome to Urban Teacher TV. This week I'm going to be interviewing Naimish from Show My Homework. So welcome Naimish to Urban Teacher TV, and it's going to be lovely to hear kind of some of the stuff that as a teacher and all the way through to running the edtech and so on, but it'd be lovely to hear about your background.
Sure, thanks Mark. Thanks for giving me the opportunity today to share my story. So I taught IT. I taught IT to 11 to 16-year-olds.
And I seen when I was reading your review that you worked yourself up, so you became into the part of SLT member?
That's right, yeah. I was an assistant head within like 2.5 years. And I guess when I first started, after my NQT year, I was really a bit audacious, and I applied for a director of e-learning job, which is really, a head of department role.
Yeah.
And I applied for this role, and luckily for me, the head teacher at the school was a real maverick. And he saw I had a lot of energy, a lot of passion, and he gave me the opportunity. And when I took that role, GCSE results at the school were like 20% for the last 4 or 5 years, and within the time that I was there, GCSE results went up to like 90%.
Amazing. So what was some of the things that you was doing to raise that achievement?
Well, I guess the first thing I did was I opened up all the classrooms. We had 4 IT labs, but prior to me being there, they were treated like they were gold. All the rooms were closed. And when it was really just 4 rooms full of, black boxes, Dell basic computers. So the first thing I did was open up all the computer rooms. We had breakfast club, lunchtime club, after school club. I got rid of the very traditional curriculum that most schools tend to adopt then, which was pretty much Office. Learn PowerPoint, learn Word, learn Access, and then I replaced that with tools like Scratch, Prezi, and a few other tools. And all of this was underpinned by having assemblies with all the key year groups. So year 7 all the way to 11 to say, look, we're going to change things up, and you guys and girls can use all the computer rooms as and when you want, but under these conditions.
Amazing. And then you left education. So tell us about that. How come? What was the transition of leaving education and starting up at edtech?
Well, I was an assistant head, and really I was at crossroads in my career. The head at the time, she wanted me to go on and do my MPQH, and I wasn't really sure whether I wanted to be a head teacher. And I knew that I would have to do this for another 4 or 5 years. Politically, you're just not going to become an assistant head teacher in a secondary school when you're under 30.
Yeah.
And at that time, I just started Show My Homework. I was really fed up with the VLE that we were using at our school.
And what is a VLE for people that don't know?
So VLE stands for Virtual Learning Environment.
Yeah.
And it was initially introduced by the Labour government as a platform for schools to be able to do lots of things online. So create online portfolios, have storage, upload resources, and it's a really, really big beast. Yeah. And most virtual learning environments do lots and lots of things. From my experience, what I found really difficult was, the ones that we particularly had were cumbersome, and they required a massive amount of time for teachers to actually use. And when you think about your average teacher, they're in the trenches, they're teaching 4 or 5 lessons a day. They just don't have the time to invest and go on lots of CPD courses to learn how to use this technology. School is a really, really unpredictable place, and most people go into the profession to do one thing, which is teach and spend time with the kids, not spend their life learning how to use technology. And so that was really what gave me the idea for Show My Homework, because we had no software in the school that could answer the really, really difficult questions that I had to deal with on a day-to-day basis. Things like, are we setting too much homework? Who's doing it? What about those children that can't access homework? How are we closing the gap? What's the quality of homework? Are we marking homework on time? And these were really, really difficult questions where you could walk into the principal's office and you just couldn't answer that question honestly or in a timely manner. And that's when we ended up having lots of complaints from parents and students ultimately getting inconsistent messages throughout the school day. And I'll give you one example. if you look at the best schools, the one characteristic that they have all in common is consistency. Consistency leads to outstanding outcomes. And what I mean by this is whether it's the school vision, the school uniform, behaviour, every single person across the school, from the school receptionist to the head, is on the same page in terms of giving students crystal clear instructions and routines. And with homework, that's really, really challenging, because as kids move from lesson 1 to lesson 2 to lesson 3, it's very easy for them to get very different experiences. Yeah. Some will give you homework at the start, some will give you homework at the end, sometimes you'll never get homework, sometimes you'll do some amazing homework but it will never get marked. And of course, all the teachers within a school environment, they're all working in silo. Yeah. They don't have any sort of visibility across the school about, are we setting too much homework this week, or too little homework, or how much effort are the kids already putting into it? And so you need some empathy in order to really reinvent homework in schools. And
that's amazing, because where you've actually left education to kind of help the education system think about how we're kind of delivering homework to our young people. When did you start the company? How long has it been about, Show My Homework?
So Show My Homework, we started in 2011, and during that first year I was teaching. I'd code in the morning.
You built this platform?
That's right, yeah, the first version.
You didn't outsource it, you didn't look for no one to...
The very first version, I built it, and then as we started to get more complexity, I started to hire like a developer, and I would use them in the evenings. I mean, there were some crazy times when Show My Homework first started, when we were making no money. You know, I ended up designing videos for bathroom companies, and I couldn't afford to, pay for cab fares or taxis for the developers we used. So I'd have to drive them all the way from from East London all the way to Wimbledon at like 2 o'clock in the morning, and then be ready for school for next morning.
So it's definitely not easy leaving the education world to start up a company. There's a lot of things that you have to take into account, do you reckon?
Absolutely. I mean, leaving a secure job and starting your business is going to take a massive sacrifice. And I always tell other entrepreneurs in this space, you have to have a long-term view. If you're looking for a quick flip to kind of build something and sell it, the education space is really not, I believe, the right sector to do that. Yeah. It takes real time to build a reputation, and that becomes your USP, your moat, your barrier to entry.
It's basically, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And that's what I think I come across a lot when I encounter edtechs. They think that they can do it in a 1 or 2 year turnaround, which is sometimes a bit crazy if they haven't got the pedagogy, they haven't got the right people in place, they're not even asking teachers about the product.
Yeah, I think for other entrepreneurs out there in this space, I think you're spot on, right? It's a marathon. You're just not going to get a Facebook growth selling to schools. But the real value is having a business that's enduring, that can make a really big difference, and that takes time. Yeah. For me, Show My Homework is a labour of love. It's going to take the next 8 to 10 years of my life, but I believe we can become a global brand for homework.
And as you're saying, you've gone into how many schools last year? You said you were.
We delivered professional development to just over 800 schools last year.
Why is that? And was it charged, or what was that?
Well, we didn't charge a single penny to deliver any single training session. We believe that when you go to schools, it just makes a massive difference. It's an absolute slog. It's not easy because you have to trek from here, there and everywhere. And I've done it myself. For the first 2.5 years, myself, John, and some of our senior management team, we would trek all across the UK to onboard our schools and teachers with Show My Homework, because we felt that was really needed. You just can't be a digital-only product. It just makes a massive difference when you go out there.
And there's probably other edtechs looking on at this. What kind of advice would you give a new edtech that's starting up in education? What would they need to do to be successful?
So, number one, it doesn't matter how whizzy the product is, it has to solve a problem. That, for me, that's like the number one thing. The second thing is you have to really ask yourself, is this a nice to have or is this a must have? And I guess the third thing is you have to be willing to have a long game.
Yeah.
And you have to have empathy. You cannot force teachers to buy your software. You cannot. There's only a finite number of schools in the UK and around the world. And what you have to be careful of is not burning bridges. Sometimes it's not the product. Sometimes it's timing. Schools have many pressures and responsibilities. And you know what you're selling today may not be their number one priority. But that doesn't mean you burn that relationship. You foster it. You stay in touch, and you keep sharing success stories about other schools that are using your product. And eventually, if you are solving a problem, and people will talk. The education space is really small. We find a third of our business now comes from referrals, and which is really powerful.
And last but not least, what is the future of homework? Is homework going to be disappearing in the future? Is it here to stay? What's the future?
Yeah, so my view is homework's been around since 1901. It really, more than ever, underpins learning far beyond the classroom. And today, one of the big challenges of homework is a lot of it is a myth. If you imagine Beyonce, Beyonce doesn't just go out on stage and start singing. She rehearses, she practices. Mark, today, before you've interviewed me today, you've rehearsed,
had to learn
you've
my
done
lines.
some preparation,
Yeah.
And it's really, it underpins the foundations for what we become as young adults and adults into our professional life. And I'm really committed to changing the perception of homework for teachers, students and parents, because it's very much a contrarian view. Most people hate homework, and our job at Show Me Homework is to really change that view.
Because I definitely hated that at school, but
yeah, so did I.
Probably if I had Show My Homework, it would have been a much better experience. So Naimish, thank you very much for being on Urban Teacher TV, and hopefully you go on to inspire many more people. Show My Homework.
Thanks very much. Thanks very
you.
much, Mark. Appreciate it.